The water wells had dried up, the soil was cracked, and children were crying from thirst. No government official had ever set foot in the village of Kaya until Ibrahim Traoré's unofficial visit. The despair in the eyes of Amara, the village leader, broke Traoré's heart, and the decision he made at that moment changed not just a village, but the destiny of a nation. The sun had not yet risen in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré was lost in thought, looking out of the palace windows. The latest reports were concerning. The drought in the northern part of the country was worsening by the day. International aid organizations were talking about a catastrophe, but Traoré was suspicious of these organizations' true intentions. He turned the last page of the report. The photos broke his heart. Dried up riverbeds, cracked earth, and worst of all, children whose light of life was fading in their eyes. The proposal from Western organizations was the same as always. More debt, more dependence. "Mr. President," said his young assistant Marie, holding a folder, "are you ready to start today's schedule?" Traoré took a deep breath. "Marie, prepare the car. We won't be following the official schedule today." Marie looked at him in surprise. "Sir? But you have a meeting with the French delegation and—" "Cancel it," said Traoré decisively. "Today we're going to the village of Kaya." Marie's face paled. "Kaya? But that's—" "Mr. President, that's almost an abandoned region. The drought—" "That's exactly why we're going, Marie," said Traoré, taking a simple jacket from his desk. "There are more important things than luxury meetings at the palace. Our people are suffering, and I can't sit here taking photos with foreign diplomats." Marie hesitated for a moment, then nodded and left the room. She paused at the door and turned back to Traoré. "Mr. President, that region, according to the latest reports, some extremist groups are also active there. For your safety, .. Traoré smiled slightly. "Safety, Marie? What about the safety of the people there? They live with danger every day. Why shouldn't I?" Marie silently bowed her head and left. Traoré looked at the photo on his desk. His father, an old farmer, had taught him to talk to the soil. "If you listen to the soil, it will tell you the truth," his father used to say. Now the soil was screaming, and Traoré could not ignore this call. An hour later, Traoré's small convoy had left the chaotic streets of the capital. It was an unusual situation, just 2 military jeeps and 2 security officers. Western advisors criticized Traoré for these kinds of thoughtless actions, but he didn't care. "Mr. President," said General Ouedraogo with a concerned voice, "can't we postpone this visit?" "Intelligence says the northern region is not safe." Traoré smiled. "My dear friend, if a region is not safe, then I should go there not as a president, but as a citizen. Our people face these dangers every day. Why shouldn't I?" General Ouedraogo looked at Traoré with admiration. As a former soldier, he knew what courage and leadership were, but Traoré's was different. This was a type of leadership not written about in books. "As you command, Mr. President," he said, respectfully bowing his head. "But at least more security measures." "No," Traoré cut him off. "More soldiers means more weapons. I'm going there to listen, not to fight." The journey was long and difficult. Paved roads gave way to cracked dirt roads. The temperature was unbearable. 4 hours later, the silhouette of Kaya village appeared on the horizon. Traoré's heart tightened. Even from a distance, the condition of the village was evident. Dried fields, withered trees, a place where life was hanging by a fragile thread. Looking out of the jeep's windows, Traoré felt pain seeing the current state of this region that was once green. These lands were once known as the breadbasket of Burkina Faso. Now they had turned into a desert where death and hunger reigned. "How did we come to this?" Traoré murmured, asking himself more than anyone. General Ouedraogo heard him. "Drought, Mr. President, climate change, and perhaps years of wrong policies," said Traoré, not taking his eyes off the horizon. "We sold our lands to foreign companies, polluted our water, forgot our people." As they approached the village, a cloud of dust enveloped the convoy. When the jeep stopped, Traoré immediately got out. There was almost no one around. Only a few children were looking at them with astonished eyes. The children's clothes were torn, their bodies thin. In their eyes was an expression that should not be in a child: hopelessness. "Hello," said Traoré, approaching the children. He took out a small package from his pocket. Dried fruit. "Would you share this?" The children hesitated at first. Then the bravest among them stepped forward. She was a girl of 8 or 9, with eyes as deep and full of stories as an old person's. "Who are you?" she asked cautiously. Traoré knelt down to the girl's eye level. "I'm Ibrahim. I've come to help you. Where is the village leader?" The girl pointed to the center of the village. "Grandfather Amara is there, but he's very sad. Everyone is sad." Traoré nodded slowly. "I understand. And what's your name?" "Fatuma," said the girl, growing a bit braver. "And this is my brother Malik." She showed a baby she was carrying in her arms, perhaps a year old. The baby looked weak and exhausted, his eyes stained with dried tears. "Hello, Malik," said Traoré, gently holding the baby's hand. "Is he sick?" Fatuma nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "No water. He's very thirsty. He's been crying for 3 days, but now he doesn't even make a sound." Traoré's heart broke. He took out his water bottle from his pocket and handed it to her. "Give this to him, Fatuma, but slowly. If he drinks too fast, he might get sick." Fatuma gratefully took the water and began to give it drop by drop to her brother's dried lips. The baby's eyes came alive with the first drop. "Where is the village leader?" Traoré asked, approaching the children. Fatuma pointed to the center of the village. Traoré started walking in that direction, with security officers anxiously following him. "Mr. President, please allow me to go ahead," said the head of security, nervously scanning the surroundings. "No, Ahmed," said Traoré. "These people are my people. I have no reason to fear them." In the village square, an old man was sitting, looking at the horizon with empty eyes. Around him were a few villagers, all exhausted and hopeless. The deep lines on the old man's face bore the marks of a lifetime of working under the sun and the deep sadness he was now experiencing. "Amara," Traoré called, approaching the old man. The old man raised his head, his eyes filled with disbelief. "President Traoré," he said with a trembling voice, Is that really you?" Traoré knelt before him, holding the old man's hands. "Yes, I have come, Amara, to see your situation. Tell me, what's happening here?" Amara's eyes filled with tears. "It hasn't rained for 3 months, Mr. President. Our wells have dried up. Our crops have died. Children are getting sick and—" His voice broke. He couldn't continue. "The government has forgotten us," said a middle-aged man standing next to Amara, anger in his voice. "They say they sent help, but nothing came. Just empty words." Traoré took a deep breath. This man was right. The government, his own government, had forgotten these people. Bureaucracy, corruption, and indifference had prevented aid from reaching these people. "You're right," said Traoré, looking directly into the man's eyes. "And I apologize for that. But I'm here today, and I promise you, this situation will change." The man was surprised. It was not something he expected. For a head of state, especially a powerful leader like Ibrahim Traoré, to tell a villager, "You're right." "Amara," said Traoré, "would you show me around the village?" "I want to see everything." Amara slowly got to his feet, wincing from joint pain. "Of course, Mr. President, but there's not much to see, just pain and death." "But you're still here," said Traoré, placing his hand on the old man's shoulder. "You're still fighting. That tells me a lot." Within an hour, Traoré had seen every corner of the village. The water wells, once the lifeblood of the village, were now just dry holes. The fields, once green and alive, were now like a desert. And worst of all, the marks of hunger and thirst on the children's faces. "This well," said Amara, pointing to a dry pit, "was built 10 years ago by a Western aid organization. At first it worked well, but then the pump broke. We asked for spare parts, but no one came. We tried to repair it ourselves, but we couldn't. And then the well dried up." Traoré looked at the well. This was like a microcosm of Burkina Faso's story. Foreign aid, short-term solutions, long-term dependency, and finally abandonment. "And this field," said Amara, moving forward, "was once the pride of the village. Corn, millet, vegetables. We grew everything. But now," Traoré looked at the cracked soil. These lands were once rich and fertile. Now they were as dry as a desert. How do you find water? Mona asked Traoré. Amara pointed to a place far from the village. There's a small stream, but it's almost dried up too. Women walk for hours every day to bring back a bucket of muddy water. Most of the time, even this water is not suitable for drinking. Meanwhile, Fatuma and her little brother Malik had joined them. Malik had revived a bit after drinking the water Traoré had given him, but he was still very weak. "Mr. President," said Fatuma boldly, "will my brother get better?" Traoré looked at the little girl. These children were the future of Burkina Faso, and right now, that future was in danger. "Yes, Fatuma," said Traoré with a determined voice. "Your brother will get better, and this village will also heal. I promise you." A young woman approached Traoré with another baby in her arms. This was the mother of Fatuma and Malik. "Mr. President," she said with a trembling voice, "my son Malik has been sick for 3 days. No water, no food. I don't know what to do." Traoré gently took the baby from the woman's arms. Malik's eyes were dull, his body burning with fever. The signs of dehydration were clear. This moment became a turning point in Ibrahim Traoré's life. Standing in the middle of the village, holding a sick baby in his arms, he made a decision. "Marie," he said, turning to his assistant, "return to the capital immediately. Direct all health teams, water tankers, and food aid here. And do one more thing for me." Marie listened carefully, her eyes growing wider with Traoré's words. "Are you sure, Mr. President? This is a very radical step." Traoré gently handed Malik back to his mother. "Yes, I'm sure. It's time." Marie hesitated for a moment, then quickly got into the jeep. "I'll be back soon, Mr. President. I will fulfill your word." "I know, Marie," said Traoré, looking at his young assistant with confidence. "I trust you." Marie quickly got into the jeep and set off for the capital. Traoré stayed in the village. Evening came. Night fell. Traoré insisted on staying with the villagers. For someone accustomed to the luxury of the palace, the simple conditions of the village could be challenging. But Traoré didn't care. He slept on a mat in Amara's hut, shared the same meal with the villagers, which was just a bit of corn and dried fruit, and listened to their stories. "This village," said Amara sitting by the fire, "was once vibrant and happy. People would laugh, children would play, we would sing songs, dance. But now there's only silence." "This silence is temporary," said Traoré. "Soon this village will be filled with songs again. I promise you, Amara." The old man smiled, skeptical but hopeful. "God willing, Mr. President, God willing." As the night progressed, Traoré listened to more stories from the villagers. The beginning of the drought, the first signs, calls for help, being ignored. Each story pierced Traoré's heart like an arrow. At midnight, Traoré asked for a fire to be lit in the village square. The villagers gathered curiously. In the light of the fire, Traoré's face looked determined and strong. "My dear brothers and sisters," said Traoré in the light of the flames, "what I've seen here today has deeply affected me. Your pain is my pain. Your struggle is my struggle. And I promise you, we will change this situation." The villagers listened silently, a spark of hope appearing in their eyes for the first time. "Tomorrow help will come here. Water, food, medical supplies. But this is just the beginning. The real change will come later." Traoré took out a small piece of paper from his pocket and began to read. "From today, our self-sufficient Burkina Faso project begins. With this project, we will create sustainable water sources in every corner of our country. We will establish modern irrigation systems. And most importantly, we will end our dependence on foreign aid." The villagers looked at each other in astonishment. This was not something they expected to hear. "I know these might just sound like words," said Traoré, "but tomorrow you will see. And within a year, the village of Kaya will be unrecognizably changed. This is my promise to you." After these words, a wave of excitement spread among the villagers. For the first time in a long time, smiles and hopeful looks were seen. "But Mr. President," said one of the villagers boldly, "how will you do this? The government has no money, and foreign companies." Foreign companies, said Traoré, determination in his voice, have been exploiting Burkina Faso's resources for years. They take our gold, our copper, our manganese, and what do they give us in return? Broken roads, dirty water, and poverty. This will change from today. The villagers were surprised to hear these words. This was a radical change, and everyone knew there would be international consequences. But Mr. President, said another villager with concern, Western countries won't allow this. They might impose sanctions even. Even what? Said Traoré, smiling. Attack us? Maybe. But I would ask them this. Why is our desire to use our own resources for the benefit of our own people so frightening? Why is our desire for independence so dangerous? The villagers silently nodded. These words resonated in their hearts. This road won't be easy, said Traoré. There will be challenges, there will be obstacles, but together we will overcome them. Because we are Burkina Faso, and Burkina Faso never kneels. After hearing these words, the villagers spontaneously stood up and began to applaud. This was a message they hadn't heard in a long time. Hope, determination, and honor. The next morning, as the sun was just rising, vehicles began to arrive at the village. Water tankers, trucks full of food, doctors, and with them, an unexpected guest, the French ambassador, Pierre Dubois. Dubois got out of his luxury car, looking around with an uncomfortable expression. Traoré met him at the entrance of the village. Mr. President, said Dubois with a forced smile, I couldn't believe it when they told me I would find you here. This is quite an unusual situation. Traoré smiled calmly. Mr. Ambassador, welcome. Yes, I apologize for not attending our scheduled meeting yesterday, but as you can see, there was a more urgent situation here. Dubois looked around, slightly wrinkling his nose. Of course I understand, but perhaps we can address this problem together? France, as always, is ready to help. A new credit package, perhaps. Traoré's smile disappeared. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your kind offer. But last night, here in this village, I made a decision. Burkina Faso will now solve its own problems. Our self-sufficient Burkina Faso project starts today, and we don't need any external credit for this. Dubois' face fell. But Mr. President, this is not realistic. Your country's resources are limited and... Resources, said Traoré, his voice rising slightly. Burkina Faso is a country full of gold, copper, manganese, and other valuable minerals. The problem is not the lack of resources, but who controls these resources. Aymara came to Traoré's side, looking at the ambassador with tearful eyes. We have always lived in a rich land, sir, but we have never seen that wealth. Dubois seemed uncomfortable. Is this a policy change, Mr. President? Traoré put his hand on Aymara's shoulder. No, Mr. Ambassador, this is an awakening, and I assure you, Burkina Faso is now awake. Dubois was silent for a moment, seeming not to know what to say. Then with a diplomatic smile, this is an interesting approach, Mr. President, but I'm concerned that the international community might misunderstand this. There's nothing to misunderstand, Mr. Ambassador, said Traoré in a calm but determined voice. We just want to live in our own home, by our own rules. This is the natural right of every nation, isn't it? Dubois struggled to respond. Of course. But international agreements, trade rules. Agreements and rules, said Traoré. If they don't save people from dying of hunger and thirst, what good are they? Look around you, Mr. Ambassador. These people are the victims of your agreements and rules. Dubois looked around. The villagers were receiving water from the tankers. Doctors were treating sick children, and in all their eyes there was a new light of hope. I will report this matter to Paris, said Dubois in an official tone. But remember, Mr. President, every action has consequences. Traoré smiled. Yes, Mr. Ambassador, every action has consequences, and I am ready to do what is necessary for the welfare of my people, whatever these consequences may be. After this conversation, Dubois quickly left the village, but Traoré stayed. He stayed for days. He worked alongside the villagers, personally helped dig the first modern well, discussed new agricultural techniques. During the days he spent in the village, Traoré was not just a president, but a worker, a farmer, a teacher. He taught the villagers new agricultural techniques, set up water collection systems, and most importantly, gave them hope. Water, said Traoré to the villagers, is not just a need, it's a right. And we will make this right accessible to every person in Burkina Faso. Hearing these words, the villagers began to work with new energy. Women, men, children, everyone joined hands to rebuild their village. Malik had also started to recover. The doctors Traoré had brought had applied the necessary treatment to the baby, and now life was sparkling in his little eyes. Fatuma was happy to see her brother recovering and constantly hovered around Traoré, trying to help him. "Mr. President," said Fatuma one day, sitting next to Traoré, "when I grow up, I want to be like you." Traoré smiled. "Like me? No, Fatuma, you will be better. You are the future of the new Burkina Faso." Fatuma's eyes sparkled. "Really? But I'm just a girl." "Just a girl?" said Traoré with mock surprise. "Fatuma, the strength of this country lies precisely in young girls and women like you. Without you, Burkina Faso would have perished long ago." These words affected not only Fatuma, but also other women standing around. For a long time, no one had valued them in this way. A week later, when Traoré returned to the capital, the international media had already heard the story. Headlines like "Radical President," "Leader Challenging the West," "Africa's New Hope" were everywhere. When the BBC reporter came to Traoré's palace for an interview, he didn't find him in a formal setting as expected, but in the garden, working with villagers on a model of a new irrigation system. "Mr. President," said the reporter, unable to hide his surprise, "this is not the image I expected." Traoré smiled. "Why not? Can't a president work alongside his people?" "Of course, but presidents are usually seen in more formal settings." "Perhaps that's part of the problem," said Traoré, showing the drawing in his hand. "Leaders become disconnected from the people and forget reality. I don't want to do that." The reporter noted something in his notebook. "Mr. President, your visit to Kaya village and the subsequent announcement of the self-sufficient Burkina Faso project has caused a big stir in the international community. Some describe it as radical and dangerous." "What do you say?" Traoré thought for a moment. "Radical? Maybe. But I don't understand why wanting to use your own resources for the benefit of your own people is considered radical." "Dangerous. Yes, but only to those who feed off the current order. Not for the people of Burkina Faso." "What about economic sanctions? If Western countries don't support this policy, then we'll find new partners," said Traoré definitively. "The world is large and changing. There's no longer a single power center. And remember, we're not asking for anything. We just want to take back what belongs to us." After noting these answers, the reporter asked a more personal question. "How did what you saw in Kaya affect you? Especially the condition of the baby named Malik?" Traoré's face changed, his eyes filled. "Malik. Yes, that little child deeply affected me. The hopelessness in his eyes was something that shouldn't be in a child. But now seeing him recover, this is the greatest motivation for me." "So this project is a personal mission for you?" "This is a mission for all of Burkina Faso," said Traoré. "As a nation, it's time for us to determine our own destiny. And in doing so, we will provide children like Malik with a future they deserve." After the interview was broadcast, Traoré's words echoed around the world. Some Western leaders described him as populist and dangerous, while other African countries and many countries in the Southern Hemisphere supported him. But Traoré wasn't interested in any of this. As soon as he returned to his palace, he gathered his entire cabinet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, standing at the head of the table, "our self-sufficient Burkina Faso project is now official state policy. Our goal is clear. Within 5 years, every village and town in our country will become self-sufficient." The ministers looked at each other in surprise. The Minister of Finance raised his hand hesitantly. "Mr. President, the cost of this project, our budget doesn't allow for this." Traoré smiled. "You're right. Our current budget doesn't allow for this. That's why, from today, we will renegotiate all agreements with foreign mining companies. At least 60% of the profit from our country's resources will now belong to us." There was silence in the room. This was a radical step, and everyone was thinking about its international consequences. The reactions will be harsh, said the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Western media will accuse us of dictatorship. Traoré nodded. Maybe, but I've seen the hopelessness in my people's eyes. I can no longer turn a blind eye to babies like Malik dying of hunger and thirst. If this makes me a dictator, so be it. After the cabinet meeting, action was taken immediately. Official notifications were sent to foreign mining companies. Negotiations for new agreements were initiated. And most importantly, an action plan for the self-sufficient Burkina Faso project was prepared. The plan included creating modern water wells, sustainable agricultural techniques, renewable energy sources, and local industries across the country. The aim was for each region to become able to meet its own needs. Of course, the reactions were not long in coming. Western mining companies described this new policy as unacceptable. Some Western countries threatened economic sanctions. International media began to portray Traoré as an autocrat and dangerous. But at the same time, an unexpected wave of support also rose. Other African countries announced their support for Burkina Faso's new policy. Messages of support came from Latin America, Asia, and even some parts of Europe. The self-sufficient Africa movement was being born, and at the center of this movement was Ibrahim Traoré and his vision. 3 months passed. The village of Kaya had changed beyond recognition. Modern water wells, solar-powered irrigation systems, newly planted fields, and most importantly, the hope in people's eyes. Fatuma was now attending the village's new school. Yes, Kaya now had a school. And in this school, not only traditional subjects were taught, but also modern agricultural techniques, water management, and renewable energy. Mr. President, said Fatuma during one of Traoré's regular visits, our teacher told us your story, how you were born in a small village, how you overcame difficulties. I want to be like you. Traoré smiled. You will be better, Fatuma. You will be a leader of the new Burkina Faso. Malik had also changed. He was now a healthy, smiling baby. His mother, Aisha, had become the head of the village's newly established women's cooperative. This cooperative produced local handicrafts and sold them both in local markets and over the internet. Mr. President, said Aisha proudly, last month our cooperative earned more than $1,000. This is an incredible amount for us. Traoré nodded. This is just the beginning, Aisha. Soon the whole world will know and appreciate the products made by the women of Burkina Faso. Amara had also changed. The old man was now the wise person of the village, teaching traditional agricultural techniques to young people. But at the same time, he was open to new technologies. You know, Mr. President, said Amara one day with a proud voice, yesterday I used a tablet for the first time. Your grandson showed me. We connected to this thing called the internet and saw farmers from all over the world. Their techniques are different from ours, but also similar. We all work with the same soil, the same sun, the same water. Traoré smiled. This was exactly what he wanted, the combination of traditional wisdom with modern technology. International pressure had come as expected. Western media described Traoré as an autocrat and radical. Some countries were talking about economic sanctions. But unexpected support also came. Other African countries, Senegal, Mali, Niger, and other neighboring countries announced their support for Burkina Faso's new policy. The self-sufficient Africa movement was being born. This is not just a matter of economic independence, said the president of Senegal in his speech at the UN General Assembly. This is a matter of honor, and Burkina Faso is showing us the way to reclaim our honor. 6 months later, Traoré returned to Kaya village. This time, international media was with him. BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera. They were all there to see what they called the African miracle. When they arrived at the village, an unexpected surprise awaited Traoré. Hundreds of people had gathered at the entrance of the village. All of them were holding small Burkina Faso flags, and in front of them stood Amara, his eyes filled with tears. Welcome, Mr. President, said Amara with a trembling voice. We want to show you something. Amara guided Traoré into the village. There, a newly built building stood. It read Traoré School on it. We built this for you, said Amara, because you didn't just bring us water and food. You brought us hope. You gave us back our dignity. Traoré couldn't hide his emotions. Tears were flowing from his eyes. I didn't do anything, my dear friend. You did. All of you did. I just believed in what you could do. As they toured the school, Traoré became even more emotional. The classrooms were equipped with modern equipment, computers, books, maps. But most impressive were the drawings on the walls. The children had drawn the future Burkina Faso: green fields, clean waters, smiling people. These drawings, said the village's new teacher to Traoré, are the dreams of the children, and now they believe these dreams can come true. This is thanks to you. Traoré nodded. No, this is thanks to them, and thanks to you. Education is the key to freedom, and you are giving them this key. That night, a big celebration was held in the village square. Music, dance, food. Everyone was there, and in the middle of the celebration, little Malik began to crawl. He was taking his first steps. Fatuma was excited to see her brother's achievement. Look, Mr. President, she shouted. Malik is walking. All the villagers gathered to watch this little miracle. Malik was moving with shaky steps directly towards Traoré. Aisha picked up her son and approached Traoré. Mr. President, she said proudly, my son's first word was water, but his second word was Traoré. Traoré smiled, holding Malik's tiny hand. He will be part of the new Burkina Faso, Aisha, and I promise you his generation will not experience the hardships we've lived through. The reporter later had a brief interview with Traoré. Mr. President, he said, what we've seen in this village is impressive, but this is just one village. Is a similar change possible for all of Burkina Faso? Traoré thoughtfully nodded his head. Possible, yes. Easy, number. But we are here to do what is right, not what is easy. And yes, this change will spread throughout Burkina Faso, because this is our destiny. What about international reactions? Western countries are criticizing your policies. They can criticize, said Traoré calmly. That's their right. But we also have the right to determine our own policies. And we will no longer allow others to tell us what to do. Is this an isolation policy? No, quite the opposite, said Traoré, smiling. This is a true cooperation policy. But this cooperation must be between equals. A master-slave relationship is no longer acceptable. When the interview ended, Traoré said goodbye to the villagers and set off for the capital. But this was not his last visit. Every month he went to a different village, talked to the people there, listened to their problems, and found solutions. 1 year later, the self-sufficient Burkina Faso project was continuing at full speed. The Kaya model was being implemented across the country, and the results were impressive. Agricultural production had increased by 40%. The number of villages experiencing water scarcity had halved, and most importantly, infant mortality rates had dramatically decreased. International pressure had also begun to ease. Some Western countries were even describing the Burkina Faso model as interesting and innovative. The president of France said in a press conference, "We are closely following the developments in Burkina Faso, and yes, initially we had concerns, but the results speak for themselves. Perhaps it is time for Africa to find its own way." One evening, as Ibrahim Traoré was sitting on the balcony of his palace, Marie came to him. "Mr. President," she said, smiling, "I want to show you something." Marie handed him a tablet. On the screen was the headline of the New York Times, "Africa's New Way, the Burkina Faso Model." Traoré smiled. "Interesting. A year ago they were calling me radical and autocratic. Now I'm innovative and visionary." Marie nodded. "The world is changing, Mr. President, and you are leading this change." Traoré put the tablet on the table and looked into the distance. "No, Marie, I just saw the hope in my people's eyes and chose to believe in it. The real change makers are them. I just believed in them." "But without your leadership," said Marie, "this change would not have been possible. You chose to believe in them, yes, but you also gave them a vision." Traoré thoughtfully nodded his head. "Maybe, but remember, Marie, true leadership is not telling people what to do, but showing them what they can do." That night, under the lights of Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré remembered the decision that changed a nation's destiny. That moment in Kaya village, when he saw the hopelessness in Amara's eyes. And from that moment on, nothing was ever the same. 2 years later, Burkina Faso had changed beyond recognition. In every corner of the country, the self-sufficient Burkina Faso project was bearing fruit. Agriculture, education, health, energy, significant progress had been made in every field. And most importantly, the hope in people's eyes. Now, Burkinabe believed they could control their own destiny, and this belief was spreading throughout Africa. At the UN General Assembly, Traoré's speech attracted great attention. "We are turning a new page in Africa," he said, addressing world leaders. "This is not just the story of Burkina Faso. This is the story of all of Africa, of the entire global South. And from now on, we will write our own story." On his last visit to Kaya village, a surprise awaited Traoré. A grand ceremony had been organized in the village square, and in the center of the ceremony stood Malik, now a healthy and strong 3-year-old boy. "Mr. President," said Malik with childish courage, "I want to give you something." Malik extended a small package to Traoré. Inside was a handmade bracelet. "My mother made it," said Malik proudly, "and I helped. This is our thanks." Traoré gently took the bracelet and put it on his wrist. "Thank you, Malik. This is the most precious gift for me." Fatuma stood beside her brother, now a 10-year-old smart and brave girl. "Mr. President," she said with a serious expression, "I have a promise for you. When I grow up, I will also serve our country, maybe as a doctor, maybe as an engineer, or maybe as a president." Traoré smiled. "I have no doubt, Fatuma. You are the future of this country, and that future looks bright." Aisha stood next to her children, smiling proudly. "Mr. President," she said, 2 years ago there was no hope in this village. Now we have everything, and this is thanks to you." Traoré shook his head. "No, Aisha, this is thanks to you, and thanks to all the villagers. I was just a spark. You are the ones who lit the real fire." And that night, in Kaya village, a big celebration was held. Music, dance, food, everyone was there. And in the middle of the celebration, Ibrahim Traoré looked at the future of Burkina Faso, and what he saw filled him with hope. Because sometimes the most important thing a leader needs to do is believe in the potential of his people. And Ibrahim Traoré did that. He became not just a president, but a symbol of a nation's hope. The change that began in a small corner of the world, in a small village, was now affecting an entire continent. And at the center of this change was a simple belief. Every human being deserves a life of dignity. Ibrahim Traoré believed in this, and this belief changed a nation.